Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councilman James Torrence. I'm the representative of the Baltimore City Council. Tonight, I just wanted to make sure because we've gotten a bunch of questions about traffic calming, bike lanes. We got questions about speed humps, lighting. But I wanted to make sure that we did something comprehensive, right? Where everyone's in the room, they hear the same thing. We have a recording of that same thing so that when people ask questions, we got the same place to refer you back to because often you all have different meetings on different nights. I just want to make sure we have one place to get the information. The reason why is because the agency we're going through a different process in the city of Baltimore. So to give you an idea of where we are, we got over thousands of requests for traffic calming, thousands of requests for speed bumps, thousands of requests for new lighting. So what we're doing is we're doing neighborhood by neighborhood comprehensive plans that coincide with neighborhoods. So case in point, there's some traffic improvements being made in Penn North, which works out for us because when we do improvements in one neighborhood and if you're next door to it, we can do multiple neighborhoods at one time. So when you do one corridor, you improve the next corridor so that people across neighborhoods can reap the benefits and it just not be one neighborhood specific. For a number of you guys, you have young people that come to Dorothy Heights. So I know that you want some crosswalks, make sure that they're finding spaces for your young people to walk. I know a number of you guys unfortunately live in Reservoir Hill and you have hills. And I can tell you as someone who deals with traffic calming, hills are not the best friends in terms of getting speed humps. So we have to discuss other ways to slow traffic when you have a hill. So you're going to hear all these conversations from DOT in terms of one, getting the nuts and bolts of understanding why they make the decisions, how they go about the decisions, but also understand like the public interest in those decisions. Like case in point was how many people use public transportation in here? If you ride the bus, right? Our friends at MTA, your buses are not friends to speed humps. I'm just being transparent. A speed hump, how much does a speed hump cost clearing this song? What, 40,000?
One,
Yeah.
one is about 6 to 10,000.
So imagine you do $6,000 to $10,000 and you do multiple in the neighborhood and over time, they wear it down. To give you an idea, these guys are dealing with backlog. I can tell you right now, I think your backlog for traffic comes over 2,000 requests. Well over that. And then don't forget the fact that we had the ransomware. So those requests were lost and had to be redone. In addition to that, I can tell you right now, in just this district alone, we have over 70 requests for speed hump right now out of 14 council districts. I can tell you that one of my colleagues has over 200 requests. So, and let me give you an idea of how many speed humps you guys do last year? Because I think that was the record. Yeah.
I think about 100
Yeah.
with the record.
So about 100 locations, but I believe when you came before the council, it was 186 active speed humps. So mind you, I have 70, someone else has 200, and there are 14 of us in addition to what we are desperately needed in terms of around schools. So you got to think about the balance of, I just want to make sure you understand like why we're going through this process and tell you what we're doing comprehensively right now. Some of these things will be funded fully in terms of like we're immediate asks. For a case in point, in my office, we just secured 30% of Druid Park Lake Drive, plus the environmental study, plus the design. So we a third away there. But we still got to get the other 60%, or the other 70%, it's not gonna lie, the other 70%. And then we got to time it perfectly. So when we finish the new improvements to the park, those heavy trucks and everything aren't coming down your street and damaging that brand new roadway we just created. So literally we're timing things together. Our agencies are talking to each other because just next year, DPW is going to cover up the tanks, right? The tanks are going to be functional this fall. They're covering the tanks this fall. They're putting down seeds and they're going to turn it over to Back and Park and say, here's your park. This is your park. It's restored. You got to finish what's left of it up until the spring when we'll have a brand new park. And in addition to that, Rec and Parks is going to have to implement their actual Druid Park vision plan. And that by itself is an additional $50 million. Your new roadway is additional $30 million. So we're literally about to do an additional $80 million in improvements around this neighborhood, not counting the amount of money that we're going to put into doing traffic calming through and around West Baltimore. So I just want to give you an idea of why we're having these comprehensive conversations. Because it's great that we're gonna have access to the park eventually, that's better. But how do we make sure that in the meantime, when we're making all these improvements, like we're getting a brand new Madison Park or what do they call the new name for Madison Park Law? Reservoir Square. We're getting a Reservoir Square. That's gonna bring 120 new townhomes. Roughly, if you do three people in there, you're gonna go like, plus the apartment was about 2,000 new neighbors in just a short amount of time. In cars. So this is why we're having these conversations to pre-plan, and then we're not counting I think it's the Linden they're calling it, that's gonna be at the top, right? Near the park, that's another 140, I think 100 and something apartments. So again, you're gonna get a lot of new neighbors in a long and fast time. So we just wanna make sure we're prepared. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tiffany Walker, who is gonna introduce the DOT team. I just wanna make sure that you understand, like, these young, how can I say that? These professionals, we are limited, I'm gonna tell you. I think, Clear, how many meetings you been in together? A lot. So Clear is like, I think you're down to a team of 3 right now?
Yes.
Yeah, when I was with the city, there were 12 departments. Long time ago. So like, we're short staffed, so like Les Clear and her long nights and being here, Pete Haynes and our DOT staff, they're going through all this. That's why we're doing these, that's why we have to change the way we do things so that we can not burn out the professionals that we do have while we're recruiting new professionals that we're trying to get now. So I'm gonna turn it over to Chief Walker, and then we're gonna have the conversation for you guys.
Thank you, Councilman. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Walker. I'm Deputy Chief of Engagement for Department of Transportation. Tonight we have Ms. Cleo who is the manager of the Plate Street for Title Exchange. We have Mr. Will Haynes, who is the Chief of Traffic. I'm a part of my team is, and your liaison for your district is Ms. Shaquetta Wallace. And I have Mr. Eric James, who is our liaison too. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Cleo to start the presentation.
Thanks very much, Tiffany. I'm gonna hand it off to Chief Hicks here. Briefly for me, it'll come back.
Would you like to meet everyone? Sorry for my voice. I'm a 40-year-old cold, so this is the best I can do tonight, but I hope it's really clearly. First, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be here to talk about the community. We also want to make this a listening session as well, so we want to hear from you some of your concerns. We want to feedback on, the type of work we're doing and the performance that we've shown thus far. Both of us relatively new in our positions, but the tax division is definitely committed to serving communities, ensuring equity, addressing safety concerns, and really just getting to our backlog. Obviously, as the councilman mentioned, we have a tremendous backlog of requests, and our goal is to work more efficiently to try to address it. And we can talk a little bit about how we've been doing that. So to start off, here's our agenda for this evening. Again, representative of the traffic division on here. Unfortunately, our colleagues from planning have not been here tonight. So Clea and I are going to try to cover some of their slides as well. And then next steps, which sounds a little bit, broad, but really is talking about, some of your concerns and really kind of creating listening section out of this opportunity as well as we get to the end of our presentation. So this is one of the slides that actually what our planning colleagues gave us. It's what is a capital project? Essentially, how do we get projects done in the city? So, I have an operating budget and I have capital funds where I can actually pursue certain types of projects. But a lot of what we have is that we get completely directed by the city forces. But there are cases where we can get funding to do larger scale projects. And the way we try to go about that is here's exactly what we're going to get, talk to us about the concerns, and then start to collect supporting data, look at crash data, look at speed data, just try to get a sense of what the problems are and give context to those problems. This is data too. Your feedback is probably the most comprehensive data. We do look at, volume, speeds, crashes again, but this is a fourth data set that's really, really critical. It gives context to the sort of numerical data that we tend to collect. And then we start to envision, okay, what are these projects gonna look like? You know, what scale are they gonna be? What's the geographic scale? You know, can we come up with countermeasures that are gonna address those issues? The thing about capital improvement projects, they take years to come to fruition. So I want to make that clear, but there are things we can do in the meantime. Our approach is really to look at immediate action items, things we can do. I want to hear about signs that we need to replace. I want to hear about theme marks that are faded. But then also we look at short, intermediate, and long-term improvements we can do as well. So there's a constant flow of improvements in the community. If we only focus on long-term, well, we do one project and then we come back 10 years later and we do another project. If we only focus on immediate action items, we do something right now, quick hits, and then you don't see it for a while, and there's more to be done. So by kind of pursuing those four different parallel paths, we're able to get a lot more done. And then, you know, eventually, once we get to an idea or a concept that we want to pursue, you know, we go into the planning and design phase, and ultimately into construction again, which will take several years. So just in terms of how we come about some of these projects, for bike facilities, and again, our colleagues are going to talk about that. They tend to look at the bikeway master plan. So they tend to look at, okay, where are bike facilities designated throughout the city? And then they also just kind of consider complete street as purview is, and where can we promote like multimodalism? But not only focus on cars, but also focus on walkability, bikeability, scootability, whatever the other modes of transportation are that exist. And that's sort of our mandate through complete streets. So, you know, one of the things that Queen and I have purview over is traffic calming. And I know that's a big concern that you all have. And the way we try to do that is, you know, we often don't have a strategy per se. Our strategy is to really listen to communities. And a lot of that is through 311 requests. And so we listen, we find out where those concerns are, and then we look at how we can get those implemented. So we may look at how can we consolidate requests. You know, you may have a request on one block, you may have a request on another block, you may have a request on another block. Our goal is not to pursue them each one by one. It's to it's to basically coalesce, it's to bring them all together and see how we can make one single project that addresses all of those concerns. We look at collaboration opportunities. Again, we're only here for representative traffic, but there are other agencies, there are other divisions within transportation that we work with to try to kind of bring our resources together. And then obviously addressing safety is our number one priority, and equity, which is a huge priority of our team. We talk about it daily. We know that there are historically underserved communities. We know that sometimes squeaky wheels get our attention. And our approach is to say, okay, let's look at equity scores. Let's look at community demographics. Let's look at who we're truly serving to make sure we have a balanced distribution of resources throughout the city. One other part of my team that's under my purview is also automated enforcement. Philip's not here tonight, but his approach to putting in automated enforcement, which is speed cameras, red light cameras, is also largely based on requests from communities. And so we can talk a little bit about where we're pursuing automated enforcement with your community as well. And then as far as infrastructure improvements, that also comes from community requests, but then we also have teams that are constantly doing assessments of infrastructure, you know, sidewalks, curb ramps, things that need to be improved, and programming those improvements. And then lastly, what I'll just say is that we're constantly talking to one another. So there's always collaboration. We're always figuring, oh, you have a project? Well, I have a project too. How can we kind of bring our money together, our resources together, our consultants together? How can we piggyback on your contract to get something done? So do you want to take this or do you want me to take this? We can teachers that are showing my age now. So this is a map of your community, and we wanted to just kind of highlight some things that we have going on right now. Sure. Oh, really?
That's why we moved here, and we got messages that it's better.
Yeah, I do apologize for that. So what should I do? Should I speak to the mic? Okay. How's this? It's better? Okay. So we wanted to kind of create a graphic that, oh yeah, this is, but I can hear myself better. We want to create a graphic that actually demonstrated some of the things that we had underway in your community. You can see those sort of blue dash lines over on the far left. The reason those are dashed is because one of our partners who's not here today actually has bicycle projects planned for those two corridors. But then also those are two corridors where we are looking at automated speed enforcement. There were requests for traffic calming in the form of speed humps on those corridors. And as the councilman mentioned, because of grades, we found that those weren't feasible. So we are looking at automated enforcement, not only on the the blue dashed corridors, but also on the solid blue corridor there. I just made those dashed because those are where the bike projects are going or planned. So that is something we are pursuing. It doesn't mean we're done. I think, so do you have a question or? Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. So the one on the far left, I believe is Madison.
In Utah, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to figure out which lenses to look through on my glasses. And then the other one is Utah, and then the solid blue one is Linden.
Middle one is Utah.
So I can just go left to right one more time, just for everyone. The far left is Madison, the middle blue is Utah, and then finally the one on the right, which is a solid blue line, is Linden.
And the bike lanes run dotted.
Yes, the bike project is proposed for the dotted line corridors, and I wanted to kind of call those out, just so you knew which corridors we were talking about.
Yeah, these are. Yeah, later in the presentation is more detail on the bike items, but there are some additional safety enhancements within that existing bike lane.
Yeah, so just wanted to call those out. You can see some lines also in green there. You can see one that's on Linden a little bit further to the north. And then you can see one on what I believe is Whitelock, right there. Yep, thank you, that lateral line. So those are two streets where we actually have approved speed hump installation. So they are in the process, they haven't been installed yet. But those are ones where we, to use some inside baseball, issued work orders to get that moving. Where you see that purple line, I believe that's Brookfield, and that is one that's under evaluation right now. So we're looking into that. We haven't approved that yet, but it's one that we're studying.
So, Linden, where there's Donnie Howard, there's school, where the children are crossing the street. And at the top of Linden, where there are absolutely children, there's the
Well, what we tried to do on the southern portion is to focus on automated enforcement. It doesn't mean we're done looking at measures, but it's just because of the grade, we cannot do speed humps because it's too steep of a grade. Well,
Grade meaning too much hill, too much incline.
yeah, too much hill, too much incline.
I know what frees me, but I don't know anything about grade impact speed. And I
About
work
like hardship.
in transportation, so. I don't understand how that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, typically our approach is if there's a longitudinal slope of more than 8%, and that's just national best practices, we tend not to propose speed humps. We tend to look at other measures.
So it's a preference, not mandated.
It's not a preference. It's based on, again, national best practices. And part of that is that because of this.
Sure, I think you explain what question is. Best practice because of safety. Explain what happens when a car or bus hits a speed bump on sloped surface as opposed to a flat.
Sure.
Can you
There's just,
repeat that first for the people in?
I'm trying to answer the question.
One question at a time so that we don't be confused and it doesn't play right here the question and then you add it to it. So are you clear on what's being asked?
I am.
I don't need to go into the weeds, but I think I just, we really want, we want specific
don't want to be told you can't do because of X without a clear expectation. And I think the point about speed bump is something that we really, really need.
You want to speak?
Sorry. I'll give you an example of why we don't do this. And this has happened in my neighborhood where we nearly had a trash truck tilt over into actual parked cars, right? So for a safety standard, while that driver was maybe driving too fast, that equipment was tipped over and damaged more vehicles as well as the person, right? The reason why we're doing automated at the bottom of the hill, because people are dashing down to the light where your children are coming, right? The speed humps may not be, and I say this in the most sincere way, speed humps are a violence to most people, right? That ticket that they want to let people get will probably slow them down for the speed hump if they're down to their vehicle. I'm just being transparent with you. So when we say speed automation, we're talking about cameras between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. when we know children are coming to or from school, right? In addition to that, we are now working with the sheriff's office where we have this automated system as well to deploy them to help with giving people tickets physically too. So we've changed strategy where we're going around between those. Case in point, Winsfall Elementary every year, like clockwork. So like clockwork, going westbound on Windfall Parkway in front of Windfall Elementary, we average 17,000 tickets. Right? We can't put a speed bump there because, again, we have NCA service. So, case in point, again, another issue. If we had bus service turning onto that route, we have a grade at the top of that is suitable for buses come down. So when we work with NCA and they get to the lower portion, we divert a vehicle that way. They might turn over and slip over people in the front, right? So these are conversations that we have to have. Guess what? We had a speed hump in the alleyway that was in Pandora. Everyone remembers the home that nearly collapsed. This one went into the side of the home with the actual trash truck. There was a speed bump there, right? So we're going back to these conversations like how we do it. We're trying to do mix and match. If we find out that automation doesn't work, we might have to figure out a way to do elevated crosswalks and speed bumps as well to figure out how to get there. But we have to go with what works, what we know to work best for both right now.
Are going to put him in front of John Beaver Howard in the year. Oh, I'm sorry.
So let me repeat that. Are you asking if we can do automation this year? Typically, when they're automation, we get them within 6 months, correct?
It's under testing right now. I can follow up and get a specific time frame, but right now it's just testing.
Please repeat everything.
Sure. So the question is, are we gonna have automated enforcement installed this calendar year? I do not know. It's under testing right now, so it's being evaluated for feasibility. Once we've determined that, then we'll set a timeline for when that can potentially go in.
So when did the two circles on the map?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. So there was I'll actually turn it over to you, Clea, because there was a meeting previously here at the school to talk about school safety and some countermeasures for improving student safety came out of that meeting. So let me turn it over to Clea to talk about that. By the way, the question was, what do the orange circles mean on the graphic?
The green circle. The green circle.
I'll talk about that too.
So I'll tackle the TDL circles first, which is Utah at North and Linden at North. And I've been working with the school system, so representatives from this school and then Baltimore City Public Schools generally to look at the walking routes to Dorothy Height and what improvements can we get in this summer to improve safety on those walking routes, knowing that more kids will be coming to this school because of another school closure and for the students that's already here. So I'll
You want to move forward too?
just go right on ahead to that section now. So at North at Utah, they're looking at a host of safety improvements at both these intersections. So we're gonna be looking at the pedestrian signal timing and increasing that time to make sure it's suitable for kids and they're potentially gonna walk a little bit slower, need a little bit more time crossing the street. We're gonna be installing more school crossing signage to just draw attention to the fact that this is a school walking route, you know, for drivers to be on the lookout for the shorter folks. And we'll be instituting no turn on red at these intersections, so that will reduce conflicts between turning vehicles and folks crossing the street. And these will also be under evaluation, I believe, for red light cameras, but this list is what we're committed to this summer. So the red light camera testing may take a few additional months before install.
I'll add to that. So when you saw Washburn close, the mandate to the school district as well as BPD, school police was crazy trying to route. The other piece of DOT was we had to do traffic calming in areas that we know where would be pedestrian, make pedestrian safer. But the mainly because I were expecting close to 20 young people coming from the south, right? That will be taken out. The same thing happened when we had young people coming from St. Laura that coming right here to school now. So we're just making sure that we treat our young people who choose this close, that they have a welcoming route to this school. In addition to that, the school district has committed to having persons along that route to make sure those young people, when they start here next month, have adults along the route that help them, guiding them through the streets that they're going to be navigating coming here. As far south as close to where the Jerome YMCA is, that's how far south young people are getting added into the school zone. So we're literally trying to create safe pathways across multiple major intersections to get here and make sure that that final last crossing is one of the safest that they have. And that means that we will have a school police officer there that's observing going that route to and from school. In addition to that, BPD is committed as well, having our neighbor resource officers here as well, helping navigate them through that because they can be transparent. They're going to cross some areas where there's some unsavory types to happen. So like this man, they're going to see things that we don't want them to see. And the message from the first month of school and throughout the school year is that you have to. So we're making a clear investment in terms of personal resources. So we're also trying to make sure. Also, in addition to that, we're making sure that we do things operating. So, case in point, if a young person, if you're like 6 and 9, and your leg's not as long as mine, so it's going to take you longer to go across the street. So if you count it, there's a total of 6 lanes they have to cross the street to get to this, the other side of the avenue. Then walk up the street one block. That's construction. That's why we're doing this as well. Because we're going to automate and we're supposed to get automation for the bus lane. Because people who are speeding through that bus lane may not see that little person. So we're making sure MTA police is also helping us with mandating that people don't drive in that bus lane so that our young people don't get hit because someone is in that bus lane, right? So we're trying to measure as much as possible because people are going to traumatic experience. They're super sports. And they're going to have to come here in the whole community. We're trying to make sure that at least the walk to school is welcoming everyone to get.
Claire, can you tell them just until after the presentation? Yes, please, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just to reiterate, we'll go through the rest of the presentation and then open it up again for questions at the end. Yes, we will. But just to finish up, the other specific improvements we're looking at for school crossings. We're also taking a look at bump outs at these 2 intersections to shorten up the crossing distance where possible. These would be paint and flex posts, at least to start. That's what's possible in the short term. And then at north at Linden, you can see we're looking at adding some flex posts along the bus lane to at least discourage folks from illegally crossing into the bus lane and using it to pass other cars. Yeah, so there's a question as to what flex posts are. Sure. So flex posts, as you see in this photo, are the white, some people say like a white flexible stick that you see along our roadways. They are a traffic calming tool that we use because they are quick and easy to install, and we're able to deploy them just much more easily into more areas to meet the high number of traffic calming requests that we receive. Bump outs are I'm sorry, I don't have a picture. I can possibly. No, anyway, so a bump out is used at like a parking lane, and it would be a striped and flex posted area to discourage a car from entering that space of the parking lane. It just shortens up the crossing distance. So normally you would have, say, 2 driving lanes and 2 parking lanes. But if you put flex posts in the parking lanes, it just means the car is not able to drive into that space. And so it just makes a little more safe space for pedestrians in the roadway. Bring it back to the Drew Park Lake Drive.
I'll just do that really quickly. That was like a last minute addition, actually. DPW reached out to me on Friday last week, saying that they wanted to restore the left turn there at Linden and Druid Parkland Drive. So I just added that there. I haven't looked at it yet. We want to look at it from a physical standpoint. Obviously, there are barriers out there and stuff, so we want to make sure that geometrically the intersection is suitable to restore that left turn. We'll also be looking at the traffic light, some of those traffic light elements to make sure also that those are appropriate to restore the left turn. But it's hot off the press. Haven't looked at it yet, but it's something that's on my hit list.
Yeah, I'm going to touch a little bit on some developer-led projects in this area as well. Particularly, they are quite close to where we are right now. In general, the DOT role for a developer-led project, we review plans and make sure that the plans are in compliance with city regulations for both the time when it's under construction, so like maintenance of traffic and how they're doing the construction, and then the final design, making sure that, you know, they have a wide enough sidewalk for putting back amenities that are benefiting the city as opposed to just the private property. So one of the big items we were touching on was the newly renamed Reservoir Square. And within that development, they will also be doing some traffic calming initiatives. And at this following list of intersections, pretty much every intersection their property is targeting, they will be narrowing the roadway widths just at the intersection. So as I was saying before, bump outs, I was discussing what the city can put in quickly is flex post bump outs, but these will be concrete. So they'll be concrete and they'll be upgraded to ADA ramps. So in that instance, as I said, they'll be narrowing the crossing. So a student will only have to cross 20 feet of roadway instead of 30 to 40 feet of roadway at a given intersection. So it's a big safety improvement, and it also encourages drivers to slow down as they're taking turns, and will be a big benefit to the area and help manage speeds with, even though there will be an introduction to more cars, they will be more inclined to follow speed limits with these treatments. Another big project that is coming to a large area, but one specific intersection near here is Utah at North again, that the BMP tunnel, one of their utility site with an electric, just building will be at Utah North, so they'll be doing some construction there, but that is several years away, so. And they'll be performing a lot more independent research or independent outreach, the BNP folks themselves. And I believe that Reservoir Square construction will be wrapped up by the time BNP is coming through, so. But if not, if their tail end overlaps, they will be coordinating with each other on their construction plans, MOT routes on to North Ave, and that will be under track review as well. Yeah, so MOT is making the traffic and just basically means how are they actually getting the construction done? How are they literally maintaining routes for the traveling public through that construction site, which is another aspect of the developer plan under review by the team. Oh, yeah, so it would include walking routes and vehicle routes through the site as well. Okay, and then one more project coming to this immediate area is a city-led project at Utah North. We are going to be rebuilding the signals at that intersection. So that will be the replacement of all signal poles, replacement of all pedestrian signals, ADA upgrades to all the many corners at that intersection. And we would at that time also be looking at, as I said, making some of those flex post bump outs concrete. So just making those safety improvements with a more permanent material. And that construction is anticipated in 2025. So along with to set up the next segment for going back into some of the bike projects, we're just going to be talking about some traffic best practices, talking about national standards and safety protocols that research that has been done across the country. And one of the proposals, as I'm sure folks are aware, that we will be getting into a little just slightly later on, is back in angle parking and safety benefits of that. One example in the city of back in angle parking is on the avenue in Hamden. This was a high traffic, high pedestrian area, and so that's why we've implemented first there and have been very successful. And generally, the main benefit to back in angle parking is it sets you up to more safely re-enter the roadway. So when we see just naturally looking at traffic around back in angle parking, they are lower than with front in angle parking. So I don't have, we can circulate, but there are like national studies on angle parking.
Yeah, so we've been switching to back end parking. The reason why I was in Hamden as well, I can tell you that there have been these practices in Hamden. Because they can see entering the roadway as well. So when you came to your base, what I would do is provide them the crash data before the installation and after the installation, so people can actually see the data. I say that because it may be a retail overload, but it's still the same amount of time. That's why I say that, because you would have to, I can tell you because one of the things that it's one of the roadways that we see 6,000 vehicles a day. Right? Same way that you can see 6,000 vehicles a day on Utah roads when they're traveling. So when I say that, when we say roadways and maintenance, we're talking about vehicles, there are 6,000 vehicles traveling daily. That's between 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. at night, right? So that's why I say that data is comparable, because you not only have a pedestrian neighborhood, but the thing about it as well, the number of traffic is going to the traffic patterns have changed from the disruption.
So what makes it safer, single lane or the angled parking? Is angled parking make it any safer, or the fact that you're reducing it from 2 lanes to 1 lane? Because if we just wanted 1 lane, there are many ways, different ways to do that. You don't have to have angled parking in order to do that.
So I'll let
I'll watch it.
no, I would say that it's easier to let them explain it because I can tell you from having the narrow lanes. I'll give you an example that we just did the district. So everybody knows what Rushtown and West Falls is. So what we did at Rushtown and West Falls, we changed the signal timing. We created dedicated 11 turn and right turn lanes. Reason why, because every day we had an accident at that intersection. So we average on 200 accidents a year, and just that one intersection. We're down to like 1 a year, right? From the installation of narrow line. The reason why is because even though I hate, and I'm sorry to say that, I hate flex posts, I hate looking at them, but it makes me more aware of where my spacing is because some people don't know the spacing when they're on the back end. That's why when you change and narrow, it makes people more cognizant and aware. The other thing is someone who has a child, it creates less of a blind spot. There's less of a blind spot for someone backing into your space because not only the car behind you have to slow down, as well as you have to slow down to do the back end. Everyone, I hate going pay turns, but as you need to pay a turn, you back in. It's one of the things where it creates a new atmosphere for you to learn and stuff. The reason why, in addition, is because your neighborhood is growing, it adds additional parking to your neighborhood. And it's going to have, you're going to have to figure out because once we add all these properties, they're going to have parking to be more of a thing.
And the stuff is on, so I drive out on some place where I can park in front of my house every single day and I've done it for 18 years. I've had no problem. I think I just go on. We don't have that issue.
That would be case now. I could actually also have people parking in my block. I think.
We're gonna finish the presentation and then go into questions.
Thanks for coming. What should we roll into Steve on this one?
Speed humps by far the largest frequency we get in our division. And obviously speed humps have if installed properly, spaced properly, placed on the right corridor, they have the impact of slowing down traffic over the course of the corridor. You may see some cases where one speed hump is put in one location and that's the only speed hump, or maybe two are put in there far apart. It creates what's called an accordion effect where people go over the hump and then they get back to a normal speed they were traveling before and they slow down for the hump. And so what we like to do is comprehensive installations of speed humps, several along the corridor, just to make sure that slowing of traffic is maintained throughout the entire corridor. And obviously, higher speeds mean higher severity. And so that graphic I wanted to attach, I mean, that's some version of that graphic that I've been using for probably 12 years, which is kind of essentially shows what the likelihood of a fatal pedestrian collision is based on just, 5 to 10 miles an hour difference in vehicle speed. So that's why speed humps are important. I mean, speed humps have been around forever, obviously, not to be confused with speed bumps. These are meant to be gradual. They're meant to accommodate, multiple modes. We do modify our speed humps designs occasionally to accommodate also fire trucks. So you may see sort of a different kind of style of speed hump in certain locations. But the idea is just they are highly effective in reducing average speeds on residential and collector corridors.
Okay, so I am going to run through some of the material from the planning side of our team. because they were not able to be here with us tonight, for some family emergency, but so I'm, in terms of the bike projects, won't be able to delve quite as deep into the detail as they would be able to, but enough to give you all an idea of what we're looking at up there. So for the bike program, they have a comprehensive job of planning, designing, implementing, and maintaining high-quality bike infrastructure throughout the city. In Baltimore, biking is used both for transportation and recreation that we want to be available to all city residents who want to partake regardless of experience level. And the bike Baltimore team helps coordinate efforts across many departments to strategically address gaps in the bike infrastructure network to make safe routes throughout the city that would be comfortable and safe for all users from 8 to 80. So safe infrastructure for kids, for folks who are new to biking, folks who are really comfortable biking, the full range. So the current, as I alluded to earlier, there are existing bike facilities currently. The Utah Street Madison Avenue separated bike lane is part of the plan, and there is a big jump shared use path, which can be used for both biking, walking, mobility chairs, or scooters. Part of Druid Park Lake Drive construction happening. So for the existing bicycle network, as was alluded to, there are the existing facilities along Madison, Utah. And then with some, those are bike lanes, and then my apologies, the green is looking a little faint, but these are supporting facilities, like sharrows, where a bike would share the same space as the normal vehicular lane. So for projects that are in the works on Utah Street and Madison Ave, we're looking at making those facilities separated, meaning there is an actual vertical separator between the bike facility and traveling vehicles, which just makes the experience more comfortable and safer for a bicyclist, and makes it more of an all ages and abilities facility. And separated, so I think we have similar to Maryland Ave, where
Cars on the street side and the bike lane on the inside.
that's correct. So the parked cars would be a physical barrier between a traveling cyclist and a traveling vehicle. So looking this slide, so we're on Utah Place with this slide. As you all know, the existing layout is parallel parking, 2 drive lanes, and a bike facility. But so the main downside to just a plain bike facility is cars must pull into that space. It creates conflict points between parking vehicles, traveling vehicles, and the bicyclists. So the benefit of the separated facility is the bicyclist has its own space. It's not interacting with vehicles, and there's no opportunity along the walk for a collision. So this is what is the currently proposed design. As was alluded to, it would be a road diet, bringing it down to 1 travel lane, which is also a very effective measure to reduce speeds. And there would be a parallel parking lane adjacent to the bike lane to serve that physical separation. And then on the other side, we're proposing back-in parking. So the angle parking, it creates additional parking spaces as a benefit and just creates that 1 travel lane at a reasonable width to encourage slower speeds for the community.
So the cars to the right though, the driver is going to be opening his car door to the traffic.
So much, so yeah, it's
Maryland Ave-
exactly as a parallel lane.
Maryland Avenue, the driver gets out to the sidewalk. But in this configuration, the driver is actually opening his door to oncoming traffic.
And there's plenty of room. How many of that?
Only one-
So with the angle.
Sorry, we can't all talk at once because people in WebEx definitely cannot hear or understand. So realizing that this is a hybrid meeting, we're gonna try to finish the presentation and then come back into the question and answer phase because the questions have to be repeated so the people in WebEx can understand what is being asked.
Thanks for that. But yeah, just to talk a little bit more, I don't have the exact width, but that can be shared, what we're looking at. But a travel lane adjacent to angled parking is typically a little bit wider than some. So it would give a little bit of door room. It is to the driver's side, is adjacent to the drive lane, but if there were no bike lane on this road, that would be the case. Anyway, there's plenty of streets in the city where a parallel parking lane is directly adjacent to the travel lane. And so that condition exists throughout the city and, you know, it does require healing, but can function this way. And then very similar looking at Madison Avenue. Currently, we have pull-in parking, travel lane, bike lane, parallel parking lane. And within this, they're proposing, once again, having that floating parking to serve as the physical barrier between traveling cars and traveling bicyclists. So floating parking just means the parking is not directly adjacent to the curb. And similar to, so that is what you have like on Maryland Ave or University Parkway is a recent installation. And that's, it's just describing where the bike lane is adjacent to the curb. Then you have the parallel parking. And then the final element, here's just a little bit more discussion on the big jump. What the big jump we have currently is an interim condition while DPW is doing their large scale construction project on the water mains. And that is happening. The planning around what that will look like long term is happening in concert with planning around what all of Druid Park Lake Drive will look like long term. So I'll just give a little update on the status of that project. So programmed public outreach for the Druid Park Lake Drive Complete Streets Design effort ended on April 15th, 2022. And the funding that was available for that portion of the project took us to a 15% design, which basically means a conceptual level design. So not all the engineering details have been worked out, but it's enough to bring the options to the public. So funding to move the study into the next phase of design was included in the capital improvements budget for 2024. And we conducted online polling in the spring of 2022 regarding preferences around the three designs that were outlined, which had different lane configurations, different number of drive lanes. And the single lane concept design was the most popular from that poll. But one, we have not formally selected how we are moving forward to do 30% design, but bringing the consultants on board to take a look at the outreach that has been done, the options that we have currently, rolling that into the 30% design will be the next phase of the project kicking off next year. And then in terms of just an overall look at community planning, one item that this DOT we wanted to also bring up is our partners in the Department of Planning. And there are areas, so at DOT we have, traffic plans, safety plans, traffic calming plans. But then the Department of Planning does a little bit more work around land use, working more with the community for what you want your neighborhood to look like overall. And so one option for looking longer term would be working with the community planner for this. We were going to take a more holistic look, not just at transportation, they would work with us as well, but a little more, just holistic discussion with community on what a community-led plan might look like. And August I'll be opening up for questions, and if there's any questions that do not get answered tonight, please reach out to Ms. Wallace. She's the liaison for this area, and her email and phone number are here, and she's there's so.
I wanted to say that for our BOP Department Planning Partners, be kind because the new planner for this area has only been on the job for 3 weeks, and his name is Terry Bolton. But he will be reaching out for the conference for the different neighborhoods as well. Councilman, so we were supposed to be here about an hour. What is that?
8:10, 8:10.
All right, do you want to say what you're saying?
Yeah, so what I want to do is make sure that like we're gonna keep the mic so that you can ask the question. We're gonna repeat it. I just want to make sure if you do not get your question answered tonight, you can email them to my staff and just flutter and we'll get you over to my staff. The reason why we did this morning is so that people think it's home and for the person. So for those of you all who are on WebEx, if we don't get your answer, get back to you. What I want to do is rotate 2 things because how many people do we have on WebEx?
We had a few. It's several questions on there.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do 1-1, so one for in person.
We got about 20 people online.
I think it's possible, short as possible. So I'm gonna turn it over to Claudia. She does it better than me.
A little bit. That. Yes, we're going to try to make sure that we are as concise as possible. So I'm going to go for the 716 question from Tim. Will there be noise and or vibration or disturbance from the vent stack at Utah? So that one would actually be going to the Amtrak team who will be doing outreach in the neighborhood.
My name is Daryl. I am at the corner of Utah. One of the questions, I don't know where you get that from, but in the short time that I've lived here, I've not seen an accident from a bicycle lane. I've seen an accident from somebody backing from a parking accident, but I have seen tons of accidents for speeding coming through that North Avenue intersection. So if we are worried about our young people in that school closure, why are they accelerating the automation and speed humps on that particular block? Because there's no buses that's traveling up the 2300 block of Utah. So I've seen people gun like punching going up the hill, but the 2200 block where I reside, that grade is 90%. There could be speed humps there to slow down the traffic as it approaches the intersection of White Line. I talked to the councilman's office about putting a red light and a speed light camera at that intersection as well. Why does that have to take
so much time in testing it. When we know where light cameras work, we know the speed cameras work.
Yeah, so there are, testing requirements by law for, since it is a citation. And we have flagged these locations with our automated enforcement team as a priority, but there are nearly 10 intersections that we have flagged specifically as new school routes. We will have 2 of them, but there are 2 other school closures as well. So just pointing out that while these are being flagged as a priority, it still is, even within the priority list, there is still a few, but we are working with the automated enforcement team to highlight these locations.
Yeah, can you go over, another reason why there is the backing and go parking is the fact that, right? So this is what they're doing to change the environment, right? So in Hamden, people running guns down 36. If you know that someone has to make it awkward back in parking, you're going to slow down because you're going to have an adding. In addition to that, adding to that angle parking narrows driving because people get to either compete, right? They're going to compete for it. To give you an idea, so the standard lane, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 8 feet.
So a standard parking lane is 8 feet and a standard travel lane is about 10 feet.
So we're looking at maybe having enough space for cars as well as driving, but also making sure that like that is a method of doing. So if people are gunning, you got to back in, you won't gun as much because you then have to figure out a way again. Being transparent with like this is how you change attitudes and actual like patterns.
Oh, constantly, but
So next, we're gonna go to a WebEx question from Omar. He asks, what about traffic calming art such as bright crosswalks to indicate crossing zones?
In terms of artwork, we do have an art in the right of way community placemaking program. But that, as the name would indicate, would need to be community led. There will be some painted bump out areas where art could naturally go, but that process would need to be started by the community.
That is every day when school is let down. Or after this, so I don't know. All problem from you. So you bring it on here. What's gonna happen? Terrible name.
So this is the plan in POC, DPD. So case in point, there's gonna be an officer here. After that age when they're young. Double parking. This is the thing that we have every year. Case in point, like double parking. All the time, right? So one of the things that we did is like add is people tickets. Those tickets can allow us to say this is the actual day we have for it. Point. Everybody knows about Pip. Pip was on Wall Street next over there in Walbrook Junction. They were double parking and traffic horrible backed up Walbrook Junction. We took away the parking in front of that drop off. They had monitoring staff. So that's the conversation that we have. Traffic management, but also people because basically they have to make sure that. So and that's one of the things. And to give you an idea, the young people that are coming here, pretty good about walking because they've done that conference. Most of the only young people walking are young people who've been trained buses because especially otherwise than that, young people walking 6, 7, 8 blocks, and we're preparing for that actual walk. So that's why we're doing all these traffic calming right now to make sure because where you see traffic calming is what we know from school records or where we should provide of these. Right? So I can tell you that the core of this school comes from Reservoir, a portion from the Reservoir Hill. There's not that many children living on the other side that are currently enrolled in school in terms of like the east side of the neighborhood. So we're literally looking at where young people living in the war.
The next question from Kim, could you please explain what the operational improvement green circle is at Linden and Druid Park at?
Yeah, so that is currently under review, but we are taking a look at reopening left turns from Druid Park Lake Drive south. But we'll go be undergoing safety and feasibility.
I wanted to know, you say national, that's tactical, what is that? And when we show pictures of like legend, but I think the traffic calming measures with the people pretty much follow the law of acting already, but for those that do not, but they don't. I live on Calibo and I go down Linden in the morning, so what I've seen people, they can be the third or fourth, fifth car back there, go around everybody in the front because they're not trying to wait on red, but because they don't want to go, they're going around all those cars, they don't see the babies walking across or adults, then they're turning and going down to the left, a U-turn on green light. So I think I moved to Maryland 7 years ago. I first moved to the Reservoir, that I could minutes from Ohio. One of the first things I noticed is traffic, the drivers here are crazy. There is no traffic enforcement. Where I come from, police set out and ticket you for speeding, you get ticket you. So I think that would be good, and how much of that is going to be in place? I know it's part, now the police are starting to people on the bus lanes, they're there to stop and go, those are, yes, so you talk, London, is what they're excluding.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You had a number of questions in that one question, but I will talk about sort of, part of the challenge that we have is that, typically it's the 3 E's, it's engineering, education, and enforcement. You don't see police officers pulling over people for speeding in the city. So we have other issues. So that enforcement responsibility, that's falling on us as engineers. We're educating through engineering, we're enforcing through engineering. Well, it's a heavy lift, to be quite honest. And our automated enforcement program helps us do that. I don't think it's a panacea. It's not the thing that's going to solve all our problems. And neither is a hub. It's going to be a comprehensive approach to putting in measures that address the issue. And that's a part of what we're here tonight, is to kind of hear from you what your concerns are, so we can go back and say, okay, I think we could do curb extensions, we could do speed humps, we could do enforcement. Really, there's no one thing that's going to solve the issue. And we have a toolbox. The toolbox is limited. It's based on what we can actually do, what we have the money to do. But we're pretty crafty, and we've been able to get projects done, but it is somewhat challenging. In terms of national best practices, I have 30 years doing this type of work, and I've worked in other jurisdictions, and so I do bring, my experience in other jurisdictions. Now, it doesn't mean that, Baltimore is Montgomery County, or the city of Alexandria, or Fairfax County, all places I've worked. But it does bring some sense of what has worked in other jurisdictions. We're constantly doing research online. This is the 30th or 31st largest city in the nation. Portland, we kind of trade places back and forth with Portland, who's also 30th and 31st. They have great best practices. They've done a lot in terms of multimodalism, traffic calming. So we do look at our sort of cousin agencies throughout the country to kind of see what's been successful there to kind of help us guide our steps.
Question, WebEx, and will the Utah intersection upgrade include the image for protected intersection and blank signal?
So at Utah North, we are still coordinating between the signal upgrade, the BNP project upgrade, and the bike project for what the final configuration will look like, since these three projects are overlaid on each other. There are not currently bike signals planned, but the final, as I said, the exact final configuration, we are still bringing our three design teams together on that.
Yes, good afternoon. I live on Madison 2540. Can you go to the screen to show the Madison? I live on the right side, parking on the left. I have a handicapped space. American Disability Association has guidelines we have to follow when it comes to handicapped space. As it is, Baltimore doesn't do that. You have a handicapped space, we put a sign up so that you can park in that handicapped space, but we don't have an access aisle. That bike lane is the access aisle. For me to safely get out of my car. So now what you're saying is, you're going to take my vehicle, move away from the curb, put it closer into the street. I have to get out. I'm slow. Cars are flying down the street. There's no access lane at all, but by guidelines and by law, it's supposed to be. Last time we had a meeting, I represented, I said, we're going to do about handicap parking. We said it hadn't been taken into consideration. So my question is, once again, the bike lanes are not here. I have called them several times. They have not gotten back to me. But my car, I use that to get up on the curb. Because I don't have a ramp. But I use my walker. I don't have a ramp. I have to physically, like, in my truck, get up on the curb. So now you're telling me my truck is going to be in the middle of the street. I'm not going to have an access aisle, which is slash bike lane. And I'm going to have to walk across bike traffic to get into my home. So this needs to be taken into consideration, and that's all I'm asking. You can't follow whatever mandate or whatever you look up to see, you know, what's right and what's wrong. At least go by the guidelines that are already in place for Americans. And wrong with that. But you can't. If you move us into the street, you're not going to be following this.
I'll speak with our ADA team and flag this with them to make sure that they are reviewing this area and yeah, make sure there's coordination between the bike project and the ADA team on that. Thank you.
Speaking of, my office is working with parking authority, who gives you your actual apartment access to tell us what applications are in right now, so that we can build it. And we're building the specialized to make accommodations for you so that you don't have.
What about what we have talking about? They barely take those signs in line. Signs that we call the tow if they park in the space. It takes 4 hours to come out with the ticket. Another 4 hours to call the tow. The move with me. There's no parking. Somebody's in my space. Where am I supposed to park?
No,
The disability walking 2 blocks down to get to their house because the city can't do it.
so I just want to let you know, we can give you, I can tell you from other areas where we have this type of situation in the district, that person has literally built in the handicap spot, is specialized where everyone knows what you get. I mean, so I'm saying that because like on Maryland Avenue, down in Cathedral, there are handicap spots built in already. And we do tow. It's just that that's why we're asking parking authorities where will the future applications be? Where are we in the pipeline? So that we can, so when they build this infrastructure, they're building it around you. So that's what's happening now. They're trying to figure out how to build and they're trying to make so that we can make sure. So case in point, there's someone who is currently handicapped that we're in back at ankle parking. How do we create a bump out on the side so that she can back into her spot? That's in the other parking so she's safe. So we're doing it. So we're doing it for both sides. So like,
Right, but you put us in the middle of the street. Everybody can't pop out of here. understand. I'm taking the pipeline and then with my truck, and I put the cones out, why people, the bus knocked down the cone, cars knocked down the cone, students are lining up for what they want to do with the pipeline. Now, why emergency response people are not going to be able to close the bill onto Utah. You're not going to be able to because the parking is going to be further out the street. They're not, and the bus is not going to be able to. So that's it.
So I want to know we are, because any plans that they create has to be approved by the police department, has to be approved by fire, has to be approved by NCA. So like literally, all this stuff that they're doing, they're creating a custom plan that then has to go through multi-agency reviews. But I say this because, case in point, there was a gentleman who is on Cloverdale, who we gave him a handicap spot, and they put a bus stop on it, so we could park there, right? So we fought back and forth with the state to make sure that we had his spot. And that's why we had to spin around our process and say, we communicated with the state MTA, was parking authority, because what happened was that the MTA, parking authority, that was building properties, and they ended up putting a bus in Rankin's house, so so like we're literally working this through with our agency representatives from the state, the city, that was parking authority, but then three entities that to work together.
And it's like, we probably all the same one.
I probably might, yeah. Patrick. So. So we'll connect you, because what's happened is that we've changed the plan and they have the same first name, and people can call them the wrong person, so that might be it, because that person is the one that's no longer employed by City of Baltimore.
But it's like you ask, all these companies, all these organizations, but actually have the limit line. Nobody's asking.
Next question from WebEx, sorry, man, that's the top one. Is from Omar 721. And we had another question as well, and that is, if children are biking to school and the lane will be on Utah, will they have a way to safely go up and down Linden to get to the school?
In terms of bike route to the school, I'll have to speak with Patrick about if there is, what the plan route for that would be. But
Okay, we will return to that in audience question.
Thanks to all of you for the outreach, we really appreciate it. With regard to Druid Lake Park Drive, between now, with sliders in the middle for where they put the pipes in and the way it'll block off and everything else. In the future, for the designs have been determined and it's whatever, what is that street going to look like? Is it just going to kind of stay the way that it is now?
in terms of what the ultimate look for Druid Parkway Drive will be, there are still a pretty wide range of options. The concepts that were evaluated include very similar to what is out there today, a slight lane reduction, and then a single lane in each direction option, which was from the poll the most popular, but with the move into 30% design, the next design phase, there will be continued community outreach. So at this time, the final decision has not actually been made on that. Yeah, so the question is it basically currently on hold until the funding to advance the next design phase comes in next year.
I'm Stacey Campbell, and my concern is raise the road. But when it comes to traffic, we have to be concerned about traffic. So I live on Lincoln, going down the hill, I don't go there anymore because the traffic is crazy. Can't use it. I know they're Torrence. And with the bike lanes and fast lane, everything that makes it, it's like traffic is really bad. Are we not doing traffic themselves? That's what's making people really frustrated. Instead of coming down these drivers, we can't get into our community. And I think that's the biggest part. If we look at how the traffic flow goes, then we can start controlling the lights and the pedestrians, all that stuff. If you're blocking traffic all the time, it's gonna be.
So I guess the woman who was sitting back there, I just want to just acknowledge, I think she's gone now, but she was talking about sort of her concerns about ADA. Just if anyone knows her, let her know, we acknowledge that concern and we will follow up with her. If we can just give her information. To answer your question, it's a difficult balance to strike. I mean, we embrace complete streets, and one of the kind of key tenets of complete streets is that we prioritize pedestrians and cyclists and even transit over cars. And that is a change in how we've been thinking for, almost 100 years when it comes to traffic. Reducing these lanes does create congestion. I agree. I mean, we try to look at what, and anticipate what the traffic impacts are going to be when we do projects such as that. Ultimately, the hope is that if we create, safer bike facilities, that we make environments more walkable, people will start to get out of their cars and start to use alternative modes. If we improve performance of transit services, people will then say, well, it's more convenient, the bus is for me to drive because we have, say, dedicated bus lanes. So philosophically, that is our approach. I hear your point. When congestion gets bad, people start to act crazy. Next thing you know, people start doing things they don't normally do. So it is something that we're always concerned about. I will say that we currently have a project to optimize traffic lights throughout the entire city. 1,100 traffic lights. It's a $4.5 million project. It's underway right now. So we're hoping that some of those improvements will also address, some of the capacity concerns we have with vehicular traffic. We do have aging infrastructure. And so we're also trying to address that with rebuilding signals and rebuilding our transportation system. I don't have an easy answer to your problem. I just want to say I acknowledge that concern and something that, that we think about when we pursue these projects, but we're also pursuing complete streets at the same time.
So I'll add to that. It's a hard subject. And personally, people not full a lot of you, but I recognize how the people and an idea for a number of people who. So North Avenue is the second most utilized transit. So adding the bus lanes, you cut someone's travel time forward by 45 minutes, right? Because they have dedicated access. So we're trying to balance it because we're in half of the city and public transportation. So I hear you, and we're trying to kind of mix it. So we're trying to optimize the lights so that it's even the people faster when it's on the cars, but also create that dedicated way. I personally, when I'm going to 95, I take St. Paul all the way down because I know it's green for a good 3 minutes. I can get from the top of where Mount Royal Terrace is all the way down to about Baltimore Street in like 3 minutes. So I can get to 95 because I know that the lights are optimal. And that when it's all red, the pedestrians can cross in 30 seconds, 30, 40 seconds, keep going. And they have, for some of us who don't obey red lights, they have the cameras. So what we're trying to do is get there for them on the order where we balance that, we provide an optimized way for drivers, but also maintain them for transit. So we're trying to get there. The state's asking for additional money to help us get there, as well as an automated portion of the bus lane. So we're trying to include on what we already have. So I personally say, have my own. Get my son to grow when out there. So I can tell you that extra 5 minutes when I'm racing, you get by 19 first, but it is still, we're gonna figure it out. But I just want to say that we are in the transit.
And I'll just add, we are addressing a new problem, which was during COVID, traffic got super aggressive because no one was on the streets. And the people who were out there, they found that they could go as fast as they wanted to go, limited enforcement. And it's kind of like rising gas prices. We thought, okay, one day the gas prices is going to go down, and we just got used to the high gas prices. And it's the same thing with the aggressive driving. We thought that, okay, we'd return to normal once people got back to work. It has not changed. And so it's kind of a new issue that we're dealing with.
Next question from WebEx, comes from Ann. Will BPLD be repaid and VIPJUP be reinstalled? And then the second part is I attended the city council meeting where DPW presented on 10/18/22 and they shared that the restoration and full reopening of BPLD December 31st, 2022, and they will 2020. Can't answer the second part because they're not DPW. Okay, Councilman?
So, as you know, we were delayed in terms of the short part of that drive. So it's a little way of going, it's a shortcut for it. So what happens, well, we were delayed and actually started out with the EPA. We had a conversation negotiating back and forth with the EPA. So a number of you probably got noticed from DPW last year that we had to do microblasting. And the reason why is because we found granite, and granite is hard to drill through. And they were trying it for a whole year, and it would have took us 6 years to get the project done. So we started microblasting, so our 4 elements of the zoo had to be tested while we did it so that we didn't have them in the middle of the public drive. So we had to balance what was the fastest way to get it done. So right now, all the pipes, the bits and everything in the fall will actually be fully operational. We tested them right now. We have covered the tanks. So once we have done that and we've gone for a full 3 months, make sure that everything works and we don't have to dig up everything else, we are going to repave the entire Zero Park Drive so that we can make sure the roadway is safe, even. There are conversations I actually, not you guys, DPW, to see if their contractors can. Because I know for a number of us, we have behind them. So we're looking at ways that we can change a little bit of footprint to make it safer while they're optimizing the lights so that people aren't running the lights. And then we're looking at how we can regain access to Linden so we can make the left turn and you can walk back into the park. These are all things that all these agencies are coordinating right now. So once they figure it out, we can then put the safety down and we put the lead stripes and everything all together. And you're not seeing this nice little left turn lane at the top. So this is all working out in the background together.
It's back over here. Back over there. Yeah, it's over here.
I promise I'll be matching that in. Thank you guys. I know you went ahead and we really appreciate you being here. I just want to observe that we've spent most of our time talking about the western edge and not the eastern. And the development pressures at Reservoir Square and potentially at 2001 Park are going to put incredible pressures on the eastern edge of the neighborhood. And Mount Royal Terrace currently is overreached. So I just would like to draw your attention to that as a real pain point in the neighborhood and something that is being severely addressed, especially with Reservoir Square. I live on Lake Street, which is currently like the throughway to get down to North Avenue or to get to. So, we would really like to discuss with these, how do we improve the condition of Mount Royal Terrace and of those roads that, are egress from all of this precious development out onto those major throughways.
I look forward to that conversation. I mean, I put the slide together, or not the slide, but the other one, they had the dots and lines. And I was like, yeah, I did notice the east side. Well, what are we doing over here? And we actually hopped on a call right before this meeting. We're like, what are we doing over here? So it's something that we're aware of, and look forward to having that conversation. One more question.
So I just, okay, I'll say, and then Soledad, because I don't want to be respectful of the woman who's been here, who has to be at the 8 o'clock. Just be mindful that like she has to go home. I told me.
Sorry, Kiana Roberts, I live on Madison Avenue. So first question is, and we kind of touched on it with ADA, but what about city services for Madison and Utah when you changed the parking and put in the bike lane? How are city services going to clean the streets, snow removal, emergency services? I've had several occasions where neighbors had to call, EMT services and things like that. And it blocks the road. It's a nightmare. Now, of course, the way it's configured now, you can still kind of somewhat get around it. Street cleaning, it gets done. But once you put in those flexi sticks or whatever you call them, how are those city service needs going to be addressed? What are you going to do about it? Because I'm usually out there every week cleaning my street, or my portion of the street. So I want to make sure that that gets done because we're also paying taxes for those things to be done. Second part of my question is, you mentioned rebuilding the signal on Utah at North Avenue. What about Madison at North Avenue? Because right now, Madison is one way going south. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen cars speeding up Madison going north on a one-way, and I'm screaming, one way, so that they can stop and turn around so that they don't kill anyone. And we don't have ADA ramps at the ends of the block, specifically at Madison and Clendening. There's no ramp there. And so if you're in a wheelchair, which I have a friend who's in a wheelchair, when she comes to visit me, she parks on Clendening and comes through the alley, up the sidewalk, up the street to my house. Ridiculous.
I'll start.
The first thing I'll say, sounds like we'll have Madison reviewed for some additional do not enter signage, potentially some additional one-way signage. In terms of street sweeping, we are looking at procuring some narrower sweeping vehicles that can fit in bike lanes as well to continue to sweep those curbs. It will, that has not been purchased yet, but the maintenance folks are seeing that challenge as well, and recognizing that challenge. In terms of other services, we will flag these changes, with DPW, with emergency response, and just work with them, make sure they are aware and able to be continuing to provide the services. In terms of ADA, I'll just say we are going through a ADA audit of citywide, and I can flag this area with our ADA team. And they're putting together a comprehensive plan for citywide ADA upgrades. It is a long-term plan because there are thousands of ramps that are needed. But I definitely hear that concern. It's a big priority. It's our biggest budget line item. And we'll be just continuing to make progress on that really quickly.
And last question.
Thank you. I live in Utah Place, the 2300 block. And I have a lot of concerns about people backing in the parking space parallel. Because even though we don't park back now, I got hit by somebody that could see perfectly well the back of the car. And it cost me $2,500. So imagine what is going to happen with the people trying to back, because people don't park correctly. And we are very crowded in Utah Place. We're really crowded. And I don't see how this is going to solve the problem. I think we're going to have more accidents because people don't know how to park.
No, so that full disclosure, I'm going to say you a lot that involves money with it. So people are parking rear-ended into a full Poland parking spot. I just want to be clear. The angle is totally different. So because I have a different portion of district and Hamden, the line is this way, so I can come in back into the road to the now, they're parked reverse into, against the flow of traffic in terms of where traffic is. So they're going to the car because some of us don't have backup cameras and don't know the space. So, but if apparently the angle is not suitable for backing, so they're gonna have to go with the flow of traffic and basically be pointed driving out into traffic and the manner that you on traffic. The way that they're gonna re-angle your parking is to then back in so that if you go out immediately go into the flow of traffic and not have to have that interruption. So I think that I hear you and they're gonna figure it out, but that's based off the angles that they have to look. So again, all these things, and I just want to reiterate, all these things have to be approved by a fireman, police department. Like, they have to be approved by, parking authority and others who are giving out the special permits for persons who have handicap accessibility. Right now, this neighborhood has been flagged for ADA, because the number of persons who have children who cannot access the sidewalk with just a stroller alone. So this is why we're trying to add that accessibility, because one of the things that we saw in terms of if we can't address the ADA concerns right away in terms of like per block, the bike lane would be that accommodation to help people get up into the street. So we're trying to balance all of that at the same time. I can tell you that there are some accessibility issues that we flagged that they're trying to work out, and they're continually working out right now in terms of getting access, especially for persons who are wheelchair back right now.
So we are actually over the additional time that we were given, and we want to be very gracious to the community coordinator because it's summertime and they're giving us their time. So please, not at all, sir, please send additional comment to the email on the screen, just so that that person can also. Please,
Very strongly adverse the bike.
please, so they can reach out to the
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Torrence, I get the last word, because this is.
I just want to make sure, if you do not have a question, please email on Twitter and then my staff email, because we want to address your question. Case in point, the first thing I heard was she said her not get access.
I don't know what point he's playing, but I think it should be given about,
You hear that?
wants to be given a chance, especially the people who live